and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham-Bars incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes, and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis, your host. And we do not have Alejandro Rojas coming up with the news. He's on a beach somewhere in Southern California as we speak. Well, our guest tonight is Richard Sauder, Ph.D., and we may get a little bit off of the UFO topic. We'll be talking about his books and a lot more. His books include, not especially in this order, but Underwater and Underground Bases, Hidden in Plain Sight, and Underground. And so he'll be a real interesting guest coming right up. I want to thank everyone for their support. If you have not subscribed to hear the second part of the show, please go to our website. It can cost you just $1 or more a month. And all that information is right on the website. You can always hear the show 100% for free live and right here on the Dark Matter Digital Network. And anyone that signs up for $10 or more gets a free T-shirt. And we have a couple people that signed up recently. I want to thank Sean, Paul, Carl. Thank you all for signing up. I appreciate that. Now, Alejandro, like I said, is not here, but I'm going to just do a little bit of the news myself. And all of these news stories, you can see the links to the original stories and pictures, etc., right in our show notes on podcastufo.com. Well, similar UFOs appear over Japan and U.S. cities, and this was written by Lee Spiegel. Strange lights over Osaka and Milwaukee, both, and they're very, very similar. If you look at the pictures, you can see the picture right on our show notes of how these look almost exactly alike, and they could be Chinese lanterns, but they look kind of white for that. And one of them, I think, was really interesting because the one in Milwaukee was videotaped and posted to Facebook, and this was by a Wisconsin police officer, and it was right near Milwaukee on July 25th. And his last name is Rojas, Gustavo Rojas, and he and his partner saw these lights maneuvering around in the sky and forming strange patterns before they eventually vanished. And again, Lee Spiegel wrote about that and Huffington Post. And the next story I wanted to talk about is UFO watching the Apollo landing. Even NASA won't say. NASA hasn't been able to explain why it looks like, in an image that was taken during the Apollo 11 moon landing, it looks like a piece of the moon is like lifting up, or some people are speculating it's a UFO. I think the unusual part of this whole thing is that NASA doesn't have an answer for what it is. It looks like some type of anomaly. Could be something natural, almost like a mirage type of thing. It's awful hard to say, but it's a great-looking picture. I hope you check it out on our website. And another story I think is really interesting is a new cave was found with paintings that look like UFOs and look like aliens, and this was discovered in India. And there's also some like ancient code, and that's 10,000 years old, they're speculating. And if you look at those pictures, it looks just like a craft with like a beam coming down, and it sure does look a lot like aliens. I'm not really sure what they are, but it's a great article, and you can see again that's in our show notes. And so that is about it for what I have. And Alejandro Rojas will be back next week, and we'll be doing the news per usual right here. All right, so our guest is upcoming, and if you hold on you know what? I'm not going to do a music break. We're going to introduce him right now. Richard Sauder, you there?
Thank you. Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you for joining us.
With you.
Yes. So, Richard, why don't you give your quick background to the listener who may not be familiar with who you are?
Well, I am a native Virginian. I was born and reared in Virginia on the east coast of the United States back in the late 50s and 60s and early 70s. And since then, I went on to work and live and study and travel and be active in many other of the American states. At present, I am living in a voluntary exile in Ecuador. I would like to remain here. I prefer to remain in Ecuador. I intend to remain at any rate in South America. I do have some academic degrees. I have a degree in sociology, in Latin American studies, in political science, and a fourth degree in forestry and ecosystem management. I'm perhaps best known for my series of little books on underground and underwater bases and tunnels. And in recent years, I have a blog called Event Horizon Chronicle.blogspot.com. That's Event Horizon Chronicle.blogspot.com. And my blog is very widely read, more widely read than I would have expected when I started it. But there's quite an international following and a very solid plug of thousands of people in the United States also who read my blog. And that's a little about me.
Uh-huh. Now, do I get the hint that you may be becoming an expat? You may move to South America? Is that what you just said?
Much money, without much money, and I have very little money. Just to get rid of your United States citizenship costs a few $1,000 that I don't have. And then acquiring a residency visa in another country costs many more thousands of dollars that I don't have. So for want of money, it's not a very feasible route for me unless and naturalize that way. So far, I have not met the woman that I would prefer to marry. And so I haven't pursued that avenue. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but yes, if I were financially able, I would actively be furthering the expat agenda. As it is, I am making my way with very little scratch. It's been a struggle, but here I am.
Yeah. And your books, are they pretty well read? You had one, I saw you have some on Richard Dolan Press.
Well, my latest book, which came out in 2010, is Hidden in Plain Sight, Beyond the X-Files, which deals with the underground and underwater base policy area or reality, and that's with Richard Dolan Press. And then I have my two earlier books, Underwater and Underground Bases, and then my first little book is called Underground Bases and Tunnels, What is the Government Trying to Hide? And those are being handled by Adventures Unlimited Press in Illinois. So, and all of those books can be accessed from my website. Those who go there can find the book covers on the right-hand sidebar and just click on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the people I've wanted to get on the show for a long time, or someone I wanted to get on the show, I should say, is someone that could talk about USOs, the unidentified submerged objects, because that's been kind of a fascination of mine. And I'm sure with these underground bases, does any part of that touch on the USO?
Well, not directly, but the book that first attracted a lot of attention to that subject was written by the late American biologist Ivan T. Sanderson, and was entitled Invisible Residents. He goes into that subject in that book and talks about the many unidentified submarine objects that have been seen all over the world for years. One of the places in the United States where a lot of that activity has been observed is in Lake Erie, in the Great Lake region. I don't assume just because an object is seen going into or coming from the ocean or any other body of water, that it must necessarily be an extraterrestrial craft, i.e. an interplanetary UFO or something like that. It could quite easily be terrestrial technology developed by the United States military-industrial complex, among others. In the case of Lake Erie, the geology under a lot of that area, under the Great Lakes region, is actually pretty favorable for tunneling and making underground installations, that is, and also underwater, beneath the Great Lakes themselves. That is because there's a thick stratum of deeply buried rock salt in that region, and a lot of it lays under Lake Erie. It also extends over to the Detroit area. Detroit is actually built over a massive, very deep underground working salt mine that's been down there for the better part of a century. Now, in the case of Lake Erie, there are actually mines that go offshore under the lake bed, and the shafts are sunk down, and then the tunnels go out. I think in the Cleveland area, there's a facility like that, and one or two others on the shore of Lake Erie there in Ohio. And what I'm telling you is you don't need to have extraterrestrial interplanetary technology to make tunnels and openings that would be capable of accommodating human beings, for example, in a breathable atmosphere. You can do it with off-the-shelf 20th century mining technology, and in fact that was done, and those mines are there. So it could be that either the military, United States military, or some other secretive organization or corporation made facilities under Lake Erie. Now, I believe the stories that I've been told about objects coming and going from Lake Erie, and I believe also that Ivan T. Sanderson mentions this in his book, Invisible Residents. This activity has been going on for years. It's not just a one-time thing. I strongly suspect there are facilities beneath the lake bed of Lake Erie, down in the sub-lake bottom geological strata. Exactly who is down there and exactly what they are doing, I do not presume to know. But I know the geology is favorable for tunneling there. Rock salt is comparatively easy to excavate and tunnel out. And in the case of a covert government operation, they could just take the rock salt and sell it on the market through a front company and recoup some money or earn a few $1 million of extra black funding. So that wouldn't be difficult to do from the standpoint of modern mining technology or civil engineering technology. And the same goes for the Detroit area and running over underneath a fairly large region in that part of North America.
Now, I remember hearing something about some type of base, or it was talked about a lot off of the coast of Florida. Has any of your research looked into anything about that in particular?
Well, which coast are you talking about? The Atlantic coast or the Gulf Coast?
I thought it was the Atlantic coast, but I'm not sure. Toward Bermuda or something.
Well, if it were toward Bermuda, that would be actually further off than just the continental shelf. Bermuda's about, 400 miles off the coast. It's several hundred miles out to sea.
Mm-hmm.
That whole area, though, whether you're talking about the continental shelf of North America or on the other side of the Florida Peninsula in the Gulf, the technology certainly exists to make underground or undersea facilities. I talk about this in my second and third book on this topic, in Underwater and Underground Bases, and then in Hidden in Plain Sight Beyond the X-Files. The technology to do this has been around since at least the mid-1960s. I was told by one of my sources who went silent on me after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. But before that happened, he was telling me about an installation that Parsons has ostensibly made in the Gulf of Mexico. He believed it was in the somewhere in the eastern or northeastern Gulf of Mexico. He worked with a mining company that provides a certain kind of life support system that is only used in deep underground excavations. In the case of this particular project, he was told that the equipment was for use in a facility in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico or the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And because that equipment is only used in a deep underground hard rock mining environment, he knew that it had to be used in a sub-sea floor type of environment, because the project was in the Gulf of Mexico, not near to it, but in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the technology to tunnel out under the seafloor from onshore, or to tunnel out under the seafloor from an island, whether it's a natural island like Bermuda or the Bahamas, for example, has been around for a long time. Or, alternatively, to cut a large diameter borehole right in the seafloor and then sink a large stainless steel sealed tank or pipe into that. It would be large diameter, 8, 10, 20 feet across. Into that with an airlock on it, seal it in there with rapid setting cement, and then through the airlock evacuate all the water that was inside the tube and introduce a breathable atmosphere. Then you can, through the airlock, put in a crew of miners. And also you can put in machinery to excavate under the seafloor with. And from the bottom then of that tube, which could be 50 feet long or 100 feet long, however long you want it to be, it could have living quarters inside it and life support systems. But from the bottom of that, then, you could tunnel out and begin to make a network, and over time you could expand it, keep bringing down more machinery, more personnel. And given even the technology that existed decades ago, you would have been able to make a tunnel system beneath the seafloor many miles long in just a few years. Now, this is all discussed in a document that I obtained from the United States Navy that came out of the China Lake Naval Weapons Station in 1966, entitled The Rock Site Concept, ROCKSITE. And the idea was exactly what I've explained. Under the rock site concept, the plan was to build very large, very deep, manned installations beneath the seafloor, including well out to sea, hundreds of miles out to sea, in which submarines, actual ocean-going military submarines, would come in and dock at berths inside these facilities, and the crews would then have areas for rest and recreation where they could live and work. The illustrations that I came across in my research indicated that these facilities were going to be designed to accommodate 4, 5, 6 large military submarines at a time, and they would come in through huge underwater airlocks, which would be, they'd have to be about 100 feet in diameter. And then the submarines would come through there and would dock way down beneath the ocean. And also the Stanford Research Institute came out with a very similar R&D or planning document just 2 or 3 years after that, expanding on that concept a little bit. And in these documents, there were a number of purposes given for these facilities. Of course, the military purpose, undersea submarine bases, and also undersea nuclear missile bases, where the nuclear missiles would be embedded in the seafloor in missile silos way down there, thousands of feet, in the seafloor, or as scientific research stations for oceanography, for geology, for seismology, for a variety of different studies that you could do in that environment, or alternatively as industrial facilities, for example, as geothermal power plants, or as potentially as mines. You know, you might run across rich deposits of anything, gold, platinum, diamonds, whatever. The seafloor is quite rich in mineral resources, or petroleum wells, oil wells down in these facilities down beneath the seafloor, where oil could be drilled away from the harsh undersea environment, and then the pipeline and siphon off the petroleum. So everything, anecdotal accounts I've been told, facilities have been built, and I strongly suspect, based on what I've heard and I've been told, that some of these are definitely not terrestrial human facilities, that there do seem to be some off-planet groups coming here. They may or may not be human, but it does appear some of them look pretty human, and for whatever reason have set up shop down way beneath the sea. For one thing, you get a whole lot of physical security by doing that, and only those with advanced technology that enables them to sail around thousands of feet beneath the sea surface could come calling. So that's a little bit of an introduction to that.
Thank you. Your mic is cutting out a little bit here and there, but we're moving along because there's really nothing we can do at this point about that. Pardon me. But what would be the advantage of having these underground? You did mention a possible geothermal power plant, but I mean, what would be the advantage for submarine bases? So they wouldn't have to surface, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, and the documentation that I ran across didn't explain that, why the Navy would want to have undersea submarine bases. One reason that was given, which I mentioned, was to put nuclear missile silos down in the seafloor, away undersea. I believe that may have been done. So that would be one reason. Another reason that was mentioned in literature I saw was to have undersea manned hydrophone bases or acoustic listening bases where they would be able to spy on submarine traffic of other countries, for example, or ship traffic, or I would presume probably also on UFO traffic, since there seemed to be a number of UFOs coming and going from the oceans and seas of this planet. So those are the things that I saw explicitly mentioned, not the UFO part, but to have underwater acoustic or listening stations, and also the idea of stationing nuclear missile bases at great depth beneath the sea, along with a manned component. I think that may have been done. I do believe that in the case of bases for submarines, that it could give an extra layer of security to have some, shall we say, off-the-books nuclear submarines that go sailing around to secret underground bases, undersea bases. And they're off the books, and they go quiet for long periods of time because they are not in the water. They're actually buttoned up inside an undersea base. I wouldn't rule out that is going on, but I'm not an insider, so I couldn't say for sure.
Now, what about underground? Well, before I move on, there was something that came up on the message board, and there's another radio host that claims there's this deep, massive underwater base somewhere off the coast of California.
You need not mention the host. I don't think much of the so-called, shall we say, in quotation marks, research that's behind that claim.
Okay.
I perceive that as pretty well grade A disinformation, whether willful or just down home, not knowing much what you're doing. I couldn't say. But I've looked at those, some of the images that have been posted to the internet. It's allegedly off of Malibu. How very Southern Californian can you get? But to me, it just looked like ordinary geological features. I didn't run across any reference to that in my research. I would, however, say that I do not discount the possibility of undersea facilities off the coast of California. However, the areas that I would look at in particular would be the Monterey area, and further south, Long Beach area, and then going further south, the Channel Islands between L.A. and San Diego. Those would be the three places that I would most strongly suspect underground bases in the California region. Now, but this thing that's allegedly off of Malibu, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm from Missouri on that one. You have to show me. And the alleged proof that's been put out on the internet, I'm sorry, it is not proof of an undersea base there. It just isn't.
Yeah, okay. Just for the live listener, if you'd like to call in the show and ask a question, that's 603-967-4030. If you'd like to jump in the chat room, that's right on podcastufo.com. A real easy sign-in for that. Here's a question on the message board. What is your belief regarding Philip Snyder's claim to the underground base at Dulce?
Well, let me talk about Philip Snyder a little bit, since he talked about me a little bit before he died. I did speak with Philip Snyder on the phone, and I told him, frankly, the claims that you're making are what you're saying. I need to see some proof. You say you were involved in these projects for years. Show me some evidence of that. You must have some evidence. So he said, yeah, I'll send you a box of evidence, the documentation. And he never did. I never received anything from him. I believe I talked to him twice, 3 times at the most, but I think it was 2 reasonably long phone conversations. He never sent me anything. And then he turned up dead. The other thing about that is, before he died, he was publicly saying that Richard Sauder, a PhD architect who worked on the underground facilities, was risking something, his life or his well-being or whatever, to talk about these things. And clearly referring to me. But in the account that he gave that's out on the internet, my last name is misspelled. My personal credentials are badly misrepresented. I don't have a PhD in architecture. I've never had any involvement with the field of architecture, professionally or academically. I don't have any qualification in the field, never worked in the field. So that is just flat 100% wrong. And my name is misspelled. And then the other thing is, he says that I worked on these projects. And that is also flatly false as well. I have researched the topic, but I've never worked on those projects. I've never been any kind of insider. I've never been in the alphabet soup or worked for the corporations involved. So what I'm telling you is, if he could get my basic personal and professional details so wrong after talking with me on the phone 2 times at some length, then how are we to believe other more sensational claims of his? I've found him to not be thinking clearly at all. Now, and then he died. So what I'm telling you and your listeners is, flesh and blood person. I'm not a mysterious underground base or an elusive alien race here to do God knows what. I'm a flesh and blood man. I'm walking around and living my life like everyone else in the middle of society, and have been for decades. So if he could get my basic biographical and professional details so wrong, then I have doubts as to most of the rest of his story. Now, people will say, but he had burns on his chest. I never saw his chest, but giving that part of the story the benefit of the doubt, let's say he had burns on his chest or elsewhere on his body. Please understand that there are many ways in this world to get burned. And one of the least likely ways to get burned is being shot in the chest by an alien with some Star Trek ray gun. Guys get burned all the time working on projects in their shop, or taking a blowtorch to the oil pan on their car, or some, thick-skulled ideas they have. I mean, you might say no one's that dumb to do that. Well, I'm telling you, it happens every day. I've worked in industry where I worked with blowtorch, with an acetylene torch, and I was really careful. I never got badly burned. There's a few sparks, and that's it. But when you're working with acetylene torches, with arc welders, with that kind of thing, you can get burned, and pretty badly, and it's not that hard to happen. So I don't know how Phil Snyder got burned, if indeed he was. And as for the rest of his story, the same thing goes. Just because he very melodramatically said in the months and couple of years before he died that, I worked on a deep underground base in Dulce, New Mexico, and, I was in a firefight with these little aliens and blah, blah, blah. Never seen any proof of that beyond Phil Snyder's say-so.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy about that being some disinformation as well, the Paul Benowitz case and all that. I don't know if you ever...
Yes, Paul Benowitz's case is very part of that whole disinformation. Paul Benowitz was set up by Richard Doty and other Air Force intelligence operatives at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico.
Right.
I did have some contact with the Benowitz family. His laboratory, Thunder Labs, was right by the gate of Kirtland Air Force Base, and I used to live out there in New Mexico, so I went to the laboratory and talked with his son. The son was very evasive. By that time, Paul was not very communicative. He was still alive, but he was badly burned mentally and emotionally and psychologically by that whole episode. And He actually produced a map or two of the area just north of Dulce, the Archuleta Mason Peak area, and it is annotated with his markings, geological survey, topographical map. So I got a really good high-quality topographical map of that area, and following to the contour line precisely the markings that he had made, I went up there and I climbed the place and I walked all over. None of what he had indicated on the map was there. UFO hangar doors, ventilation shaft, this and that and the other thing. None of it was there. I did see a great number of perfectly ordinary rocks and pine trees.
That whole there's something really eerie about that area of New Mexico. Did you feel that when you were there?
Well, the whole state is called the Land of Enchantment.
Right.
There are underground bases in New Mexico. There are at least two on the Kirtland Air Force Base, Sandia National Laboratory, and Loveless. There's a Loveless medical clinic there who does. They do medical research there, biomedical research, and God knows the fact that it's right there with Sandia National Lab and Kirtland Air Force Base immediately suggests to me that they do black budget research for the military-industrial complex. And then you also have the Monsanto underground facility, which was begun in the late 1940s, initially as an underground atom bomb assembly factory. They actually put atom bombs together down there. New Mexico, in the early years, the Cold War, was a great center for building atom bombs and the first generation of nuclear bombs. Of course, you still have Sandia National Laboratory there and Los Alamos National Laboratory just to the north of there in the Jemez Mountains. And they're both still very actively involved in those kinds of research and design and much more besides. But at that complex just to the southeast of Albuquerque, New Mexico, there is a serious underground component. It has been for many years. I talked to one expert who, when I say expert, I mean someone who really, really knows the field from the inside. And what I was told is that the Monsanto underground base is vast. I'm not saying it's big. I'm not saying it's large. He told me it was vast. Now, I'm prepared to believe that means that it sprawls for miles, maybe. My impression is, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, just multiple levels. I couldn't tell you what's down there. I just couldn't. I think we're talking about a tangential, compartmentalized society that exists on our home planet about which we know practically nothing. The few crumbs I found in my research, I'll actually qualify that as saying the many crumbs, informational crumbs, and crumbs of documentation that I found in my research clearly reveal that there's been a 70-year-long program now of major underground and, it seems, undersea construction as well, and yet we don't know what's happening down there. I suppose we might know 1%. The other 99%. It's so massively funded, so secretive, so large, so high-tech. God knows. We are being played. That's what I'm telling you. We are being played, and we don't even know how badly.
I've heard, rumors of the black budget being like this massive amount of money that goes, that it disappears and no one knows exactly where it goes. So, yeah, it would be hard to figure that out. There's a couple of questions up. I want to get to them. And Just a second. There's one back here wondering if...
What we do know is that trillion...
Are you there?
I could not hear you. Can you restate the question, please?
Okay. You dropped out. One of the questions up on the message board, they wanted to know what you thought about an underground base at Area 51.
Sure. I think Nevada has all kinds of tunnels beneath it. And Area 51 is one of those places. But not only Area 51. I think it's Fallon Naval Air Station, which is in the northern part of the state. And then you have S4, you have Nellis Air Force Base, and other facilities here and there around the state. Nevada is like Mexico. It's tunneled out. It has a lot of military and government facilities, and we don't know what they're doing. I think something like 90% of Nevada is controlled by federal agencies, including large chunks by the Pentagon and the Department of Energy, which work very closely together. I have been told anecdotally that there are massive tunnels running out between Nevada and the desert areas in California. I listen to those stories with interest. I can't prove them. No one that's not on the inside has information about that stuff. So if you're not one of those compartmentalized need-to-know projects, you don't have first-hand knowledge of them. However, if you are on the inside of one or more of those compartmentalized need-to-know projects, you cannot talk about what you know and about what you do. So in some ways, people like me are the closest you get to finding out about that, short of signing your life away and going into that world, which I am not willing to do. But I take seriously these stories I've been told about of massive facilities beneath California and Nevada. You know, there are huge, wide open areas of California that are extremely sparsely populated. You see practically no one when you go out there, and the same is true of Nevada. Once you get outside of Reno and Las Vegas, the rest of Nevada is pretty empty. Actually, most of it is extremely empty. The real action, I believe, or at least a lot of it, is going on underground.
And for the purpose of being underground, would that be just for secretive purposes? Is that what you're imagining?
Multiple purposes. Secrecy, of course. Well, that's one reason. Secrecy, of course, means that if you're out of sight and out of mind, you can conceal what you're doing from others. What people don't see, they tend not to know about, not to think about. But you would also have physical security. By being underground, you limit the access to these facilities, and so you can carry out your projects with more security. I mean, if it's a weapons project or if you're interfacing with aliens, as I believe is happening in some cases in some of these facilities, then you would be able to keep the idly curious general public away. Other reasons would be for command, control, and communication facilities, for government, for the military, for industry. Other reasons for some of these facilities is the storage of commodities or the storage of archival records. Government and industry produce reams of records. For computing facilities are underground. One of the most famous ones that's publicly known is, at least semi-publicly known, is beneath the NSA headquarters in Laurel, Maryland. And then, if the stories believed, there are also highly secret transportation nodes and transportation networks underground for use, not by the general public, but by this very secretive, highly compartmentalized world of the military-industrial espionage complex. So those are some of the reasons. I'm sure there must be others.
Do you know anything about Pine Gap in Australia?
Well, it's real. It's a large facility, high-tech, very deep. It's in the region, in the area of the small town of Alice Springs, which is out in the Australian outback, almost exactly in the geographic center of Australia. It's way out there. And that part of Australia is like Nevada and the desert areas of California. It's very thinly populated. There's almost no one out there. Now, the facility at Pine Gap is an American facility, notwithstanding that it is located in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Australia. It is controlled by the Americans and not by the Australians. It is run by the Americans and not by the Australians. The NSA has a major presence at Pine Gap. I believe, based on what I read, that the CIA is there to a degree, and also the National Reconnaissance Office and perhaps other agencies and organizations that we don't know about, but it's been there for many years. Its ostensible public function is as a satellite downlink or uplink. The Americans have a lot of spy satellites, and so do the British. And they have ground stations where they communicate with their spy satellite network, and that's one of them. It's in the southern hemisphere, and so it has a strategic location on the other side of the planet from the United States and in the southern hemisphere. It's a working base. It's a high-tech base. It's very secretive. The stories about it are that it has deep underground levels, massive deep underground levels, and I believe those stories.
One of the things that has come up earlier in one of my shows was Wright-Patterson Air Base, that there's a massive underground facility there. Did you look into that one?
Well, from what I've seen, yes, of course, Wright-Patterson is an Air Force base in Ohio. It's been there for many years. The Roswell story, at least in some of the iterations, goes that the little alien bodies and some of the UFO debris collected from so-called UFO crash at Roswell, which was not at Roswell. One crash of one craft, but Wright-Patterson is often put into that story as an important element because it was for a long time a base where the Air Force analyzed and did reverse engineering on foreign technology. And I suppose UFO technology would qualify as foreign technology. And then, of course, there are stories about underground tunnels and work areas at Wright-Patterson. I've read some of that information. I think they've been there for a long time. I don't know how deep the stuff at Wright-Patterson goes. Listen, at any American military installation, you're quite likely to have one or more underground facilities. I say that because the black budget is so huge, running into the trillions of dollars. The document trail I found is so extensive, indicating ongoing military interest in underground tunnels and bases over a period of decades. And the secrecy and compartmentalization in the black budget world of the military-industrial complex is so extensive that I don't rule out at any American military facility the possibility of a serious underground component, no matter how shabby and run down things may look on the surface. That is what my research strongly indicates, and so there could be a major deep underground facility at Wright-Patterson. The documentation I have seen suggests more modest, more shallower, closer to the surface tunnels and work areas. But that was from stuff from decades ago, and the technology that's around today permits construction at a very deep level. So I wouldn't rule anything out where Wright-Patterson is concerned, or any other American military facility.
Right. It's amazing these machines they have for actually tunneling underground that can be 60 feet wide, I think it is, and it can go through bedrock, anything. Pretty amazing what they can do right now.
Yes, they can. The largest of these machines are just gargantuan. They're breathtakingly huge, and it's hard to believe that machines with that power, with thousands of horsepower, can just chew their way through solid rock hundreds or even 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet underground. But that is the state of the technology and has been for decades. Now, you could even come in from miles away. It could be that there would be just using Wright-Patterson as one hypothetical example, since I've never been underground beneath Wright-Patterson and am highly unlikely ever to go underground beneath the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But if you wanted to make a serious tunnel network beneath Wright-Patterson, you wouldn't have to start tunneling right there. You could, if you wanted to, you could tunnel in from 20 miles away or 50 miles away, and no one would be the wiser.
Right. A question up on the message board. Do you think any of the bases could function as protected spaces in anticipation for Earth disasters?
No, these facilities are not intended for thee and me. They are intended for use by the military-industrial complex and others. There really is no civil defense provision in this campaign. You are dealing with a compartmentalized parallel reality there that is does not have your best interest at heart. And I say that, or mine, because it is sucking money out of the economy by the trillions of dollars, money that we all need and could use for all kinds of things, productive uses. So right there, we are being robbed without our consent. Robbery is always a crime. It's always a violation of the other party's dignity, human rights, and civil liberties. And so the fact that a massive crime is being committed against us without our permission, right there tells you that what is being done is not being done for us, but is being done to us.
Wow. I think earlier someone said that Rumsfeld said that there was $2.3 trillion missing from the federal budget back in 2001. Have you followed that type of missing figures along the way here?
Well, you can't find out where that money went. What you have to do is rely on what you can find in open literature and newspapers and books and documents and journals and so forth, professional journals. At that time, he was talking about $2.3 trillion of spending that the Pentagon accountants could not account for. Now, just you try that excuse in your personal financial affairs. You know what? It's true. There's $86,000 missing here, and the figures don't add up. But I'm on it. I'll let you know as soon as I have an answer for what's going on here, which has been the Pentagon's way of handling this. Only it's so much worse. We're talking about multiple trillions, and that was 15 years ago. We do know that it's gotten even worse, and I'll tell you how. You can look at, and it's not limited to the Pentagon. The Pentagon is just one appendage of what is going on. This is actually a global program. Something real big is going on this planet, beneath this planet, and above this planet, or off this planet. It's costing trillions of dollars. When you see that the Federal Reserve Bank, for example, is undertaking what it calls quantitative easing, what that means is it is creating money out of thin air by the trillions, and it is funneling it to large Fortune 500 companies on Wall Street, to stock brokerages, to major banks in the United States and in other countries around the world, and none of this is being accounted for. Representative Alan Grayson, who has been in the Congress, United States Congress in recent years, has in congressional hearings quizzed high-ranking United States Federal Reserve Bank officials about this. I've written about this on my blog and a couple of my blog postings. In one case, he was grilling the Inspector General for the Reserve, who's, investigating the spending of the Federal Reserve falls under her purview. And she pled ignorance. There were a number of trillions of dollars that she could not account for in congressional testimony, and essentially was telling the congressman, I don't have those details immediately to hand in front of me right now, but let me get back to you. Well, let me tell you, if it's a question of trillions of dollars being spent, wouldn't you be able to say something about it? I mean, you can tell me if you spend $20 for something, what you spent it on. And here, trillions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars on the Fed's balance sheet were under discussion, and he was querying her about it, and she had no answer. Well, that's how opaque the system is. And I'm suggesting to you that if a sitting United States congressman in sworn congressional testimony cannot get a straight answer, just consider how much harder it is for someone like me and other researchers like me. We're up against something huge that's hard to research, it's hard to understand, but what's clear is that trillions of dollars are being sucked out of the system in the United States and around the world. It's not being put to productive use in the so-called brick-and-mortar economy. It's not being, this vast sum of money is not being put to productive use or any visible use at all in the realm in which ordinary people live their lives by the hundreds of millions and billions. So where is it going? Obviously, somewhere else. It's going somewhere else. It's doing something else. My research shows what one of those things must be, demonstrably must be, and that is underground and underwater tunnels and bases. There's also a growing body of research that strongly points in the direction of one or more secret space programs, and again, not limited just to the United States. And then we also have this burgeoning artificial intelligence technology that's being brought online very rapidly now. Our world is being transformed at warp speed, and not in a good way if you're a natural human being. And then there's also genetic engineering and cloning technology going on. There are anecdotal stories from the Krista Tilton Dulce-based stories from years ago in the 1980s, for example, that allege there are these high-tech secret underground laboratories as at Dulce, according to one iteration of the Dulce story, Dulce-based story, in which beings are cloned.
Well, we lost him for just a second there, and we're right at the top of the hour. So if you'll hang on just 1 second, I'll be calling him back. So hang on just 1 second, and we'll be right back right after the music break. If you're listening live, don't go away. Richard, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, you're back.
I'm right here.
Yeah, it is fading out a lot. That time you just plain old went away. Now, I can't remember what you were in the middle of at that point when things went down. But
well, I was talking about Los Alamos. We stopped for a music break.
Okay. Did you have more to continue on that, or would you want to move on to something else? Underground
base at Dulce, New Mexico, allegedly operated by the United States military and little gray aliens. But I talked with Tilted and Krista Tilted, and I found her account to be somewhat confused. Yes, I want to say that frequently this happens when I do interviews. When I begin talking about a sensitive topic, Skype frequently pulls the plug on the conversation. This gets into the area of artificial intelligence, and that the internet is now wired in to AI. Skype, Yahoo, Microsoft, Google, all of it, Apple, all of it is wired in. It's a huge AI network. NSA is in it up to its eyeballs. Be that as it may, getting back to the alleged Dulce base, in talking with Krista Tilton, she did admit to me that she didn't know where the base was, that when she was taken there, she asked where she was, and she was told the Dulce base in northern New Mexico. She assumed that meant the town of Dulce, but it need not mean that. It need only mean that she was told she was at the Dulce base in northern New Mexico. And Dulce, of course, is a Spanish word. Dulce simply means sweet. So they were telling her, you're at the sweet base. It's gibberish almost when translated into English. I believe that it's actually, and I've been told by others, at or near Los Alamos. In fact, my research suggests there is a serious underground component at Los Alamos. I talked to one man, one engineer, who told me he'd been there. Didn't work there, but he'd gone there with an engineering colleague and actually went into some of the underground facilities. His understanding was most of what happens at Los Alamos takes place underground, and some of it is very deep underground. His understanding was as much as 1 mile underground. And your listeners and you should understand that it is well within the state of the art of modern civil engineering to work 1 mile under.
Sorry, listeners, if you're listening, we have a little bit of an issue here. I was trying to accept a phone call, and it just didn't happen. So hang in there. I'm going to try to figure this out.
Hello.
Are we back?
Yes.
So sorry about that. I guess I'm not able to take calls on this show, and for some reason, I don't know what the issue is, but when I add a call to our conversation, it's putting the radio station and you, Richard, on hold for some reason. So I apologize. Anyone that wants to call in, we should be all set next week. You can ask your questions on the message board, instead, and I apologize for that. So no calls this week. Sorry about that. All right, so I don't know how far you got before you found out that no one could hear you.
Well, I was talking about Los Alamos and how it goes down. I've been told it goes as deep as 1 mile in the deepest levels, and that most of what takes place there does take place underground. Now, it's important to understand that the United States Department of Energy is the lead agency in human genetics research in the world. That goes back to the early years of the atomic weapons program, when it was understood that radionuclides have an impact on genetics, including human genetics. They cause mutations in the genetic code. And so from that time forward, the United States Department of Energy has been massively researching human genetics, the human genome. And so Los Alamos is a great center, not just for nuclear weapons design and development, but also for human genetic study. I'm surmising that the dulcet stories of cloning of humans and hybridization of humans in underground facility quite possibly actually relate to Los Alamos and black budget human genetic research that's being carried out there. I think that this whole thing has gotten so far out of control that it's difficult for those of us who are on the outside trying to look in to even begin to grasp the immensity of what is going on. I believe also that these programs and projects have so far escaped the bounds of any kind of open oversight that at this point it's almost impossible to rein them in. And God help us, I don't know where it's all going, but I don't think it's going anywhere good, because it's all so secretive, so massively funded, so hush-hush, so compartmentalized. I scarcely know what to say anymore.
Wow. I just sent a text message to my brother-in-law, because he worked at Los Alamos for 20-some-odd years, to ask him if he ever heard any stories about that. I'm waiting to hear back from him. But let's skip around. You
have to let me follow up on that. Your question to your relative there. It doesn't matter who he is. If he has a need to know, then he will be on the inside of a compartmentalized project. If he doesn't have a need to know, he will know nothing about it. He won't know the passwords. He won't know the project names. Those who are involved will not speak to him about their work. And if he is involved, he will not tell you either. Let me give you an explanation. In my last book, Hidden in Plain Sight, Beyond the X-Files, I discuss the book by John Pena Craven called The Silent War. John Pena Craven was the Navy's lead scientist during the height of the Cold War, PhD oceanographer. He was lead scientist tasked with developing, behind Rickover and others, a deep undersea capability, a capability for the Navy to work at great depth, up to 20,000 feet underwater, and he did that. He carried out that mandate. One of the points that he made in his book was that there was a secret project called Sand Dollar, which he uses as an example, that had 3 layers of secrecy. Someone who worked in that program, for example, might be outwardly an officer on an American Navy nuclear submarine. Within that job title, the officer let's say, would sign in to work on the submarine and then would go do something else that would have a totally different duty task. And under that task, there might be yet a third embedded program with another name and another level of secrecy. And part of the rules for this are that officer would not tell anyone, even including his wife, what he really did. Craven follows that up with another example of going into a room that's literally like a bank vault to be briefed. That's literal physical compartmentalization. What I'm telling you is, whether it is your relative, your friend, your brother, or even your wife, if they are in a compartmentalized program doing seriously secret work, they won't tell you. You will not know, and they will lie to you.
Well, I did get an answer back from my brother-in-law. He just said that let me just read it here. There are storage tunnels that are underground. That's all he told me. Okay.
Well, that could be anything, and a storage tunnel can be. That's true. In fact, I got some minimal. I did a Freedom of Information Act request to Los Alamos asking about underground facilities, and I got some minimal documentation back, which even then, in the mid-1990s, I knew did not begin to cover the true extent of what is there. What I'm telling you is that at a place like Los Alamos, there are compartments within compartments. And if you're not on the inside of a compartment, and it could be physical. It could be you go into a room and there are 3 doors. And maybe you have the keys to one of the doors, but not to the other 2. What's behind the other 2 doors? You don't know.
Right.
And it works at that level. I'll give you another example. One guy told me that I've talked to all kinds of people who've worked in facilities, and one told me that some of these facilities will disguise their air shafts, for example, in the silos on working dairy farms. It's just one example. Of course, there are dairy farms all over the country. Now, that means that there are also some dairy farmers here and there who know that the silos on their farms are not really real silos, that they are air shafts and vents for secret underground bases, which means that there are farmers out there who are involved in these projects, at least to some degree. So you see how penetrated this society is and how secret, the kinds of secrets that a lot of so-called ordinary people have. How many farmers are there out there whose farms lie over underground bases? I don't know, but based on what I was told, some of them are. I can give you another example. I cite, I believe, in my first book, where you can actually design a barn, for instance, to conceal an entrance to a secret underground base. And this has been done. It's a great way to camouflage it. What I'm telling you is, we live in an unreal world. I don't know any other way to tell you that. It's so fake. It's just so false. If somehow the scales could fall from everyone's eyes simultaneously, and they could see through all of these frauds and false fronts and this vast theft of multiple trillions and trillions of dollars from the global economy, all of the people walking around who are pretending to be one thing when in reality they are, some of them, an unknown large number of them, are involved, for example, with these secret underground bases and say little or nothing about it. Do you see, you don't even need to posit an alien presence on this planet to get into the realm of bizarro world. Just using the technology, the social technology of extreme compartmentalization. I can't even imagine how many marriages there are where the husband doesn't really know what his wife does professionally and vice versa.
Okay, we have an unusual question up on the message board. Do you believe that there was holographic technology being used by the government in 1968? In other words, that they were able to project close-up images of UFOs were mistaken for the real UFOs, 1968, 1971. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't know a lot about holographic technology. I read it about it. I know the word. I know that there are people who work on it, study it, develop it. Increasingly as years go by, is this whole Earth a sophisticated holographic projection that we are trapped in one sense, and it's so good that it fools almost everybody almost all of the time, such that it's very difficult to escape its snares and liberate yourself mentally, spiritually, and physically, if you will. I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility. You know, the ancient sages in India talked about Maya, the world of illusion, and what if that is far truer than we know?
Okay, now I'm going to ask one more question about a base that someone asked earlier, and then I want to go on a different topic. Someone wanted to know about what you thought about Mount Weather.
Well, Mount Weather is a known major, deep, technically sophisticated base. It's been there for at least since the 1950s. It recently was run by FEMA. I guess the DHS is probably in there now, but it is a big base. It's in the Appalachian Mountains, about an hour's drive outside of Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia. It is run by the federal government. It's one of the big, very highly secure command, control, and communication facilities for the federal agencies. It is part of what's called the continuity of government arc of underground facilities in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. My understanding is it can accommodate at a minimum several hundred people in a buttoned-up status for a month or more. I'm guessing it's been. I know it's been enlarged and modernized over the years. I couldn't say how many it could accommodate. Maybe a couple thousand or 5,000 or 10,000. I don't know. It's a large base. It's deep. It's sophisticated technologically. It's very highly secretive. I've been to the front gate of that place, but I've never been in. I don't have a security clearance. And exactly what happens in it, I couldn't tell you. But it is a major known underground base.
Wow. Okay, now I wanted to. We're going to go off topic here and talk about some of the things that you write about. And one of them is the sixth global extinction. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, it's underway. Conservation biologists and ecologists know that over the hundreds of millions and billions of years that the Earth has been here, since biological life arose on the Earth, there have been previously 5 great extinction events in which there were huge global die-offs of the flora and fauna of this planet. The reasons are not always well understood. However, the geological record is very clear that this has occurred periodically. It's now occurring again for the 6th time in a major way. While we may not know what the major cause or causes were in the distant past, biological scientists can say what the cause is today. It is, in the main, the major damaging factor in the die-off of tremendous numbers of plants and animals on this planet is the human race. Our activities, industrial activities, primarily agricultural activities, genetic engineering now is playing a role. Our waste, all of the crap we put in the oceans and into the air, and it's having a real powerfully deadly effect on the Earth's ecology, on the Earth's biosphere. The estimates are that in the last 40 years, 50% of all the wildlife on this planet has died off. And that if things continue the way they are, we won't make it another half century. The bees are dying off. A lot of butterflies are dying. The amphibians are dying. All kinds of toads and frogs and newts and salamanders. Right now, the Pacific Ocean is dying. It seems the major contributing cause is the huge amount of radioactivity that continues to pour into the sea from the blown up and melted down nuclear power reactors at Fukushima, Japan, which haven't been fixed and evidently cannot be, and will continue to poison the ocean for unknown thousands of years to come.
Yeah, we certainly haven't heard the last of Fukushima, that's for sure.
And the Amazon forest is being cut down. The great forests in tropical Africa and Central America, in Southeast Asia, these huge ancient tropical forests are being cut down. And of course, when you cut these forests down, not only do the trees die, but all the animals and birds and reptiles and fish and insects that live in these forests necessarily die as well. This is ongoing. I live in South America. I've been in the Amazon region. I've seen what's going on, and I've seen it change within a span of 1 year. When you drive down the road and you look, they just cleared 10 acres there to put up a soccer field and grandstand and parking area. Oh, and over there they cleared 5 acres, and they planted sugar cane. And over there they cleared 15 acres, and they planted, it's a cattle pasture now. And this is happening all over the region. So you add it all up and you have millions of people thinking, well, I'm just going to clear 5 or 10 acres here. I'm going to plant some bananas and some yucca, and I'm going to graze some cattle here. And what's 10 acres? Well, if you multiply that by 5 million people doing the same thing, it turns out that 10 acres is really 50 million acres. And that's how you lose the world's largest tropical forest. And it is going. So we're losing the world's great tropical forests. We're losing the Pacific Ocean. We're losing frogs, salamanders, butterflies, bees, whales, on and on, man. The whole global ecology is crashing, mostly because of us. We are not doing the Earth thing well at all. And of course, humanity is an apex predator. We are at the top of the ecological food chain. So it's like any other chain. As you start removing links, a chain without links is not a chain. And that's what we're doing. So we are destroying the food chain upon which we rely. And in doing that, we are ensuring our own extinction, because we're part of the biosphere on this planet. And as we destroy the biosphere, we guarantee that the day is coming when we won't be here, because if bees and butterflies and frogs and whales, etc., cannot live on this planet, how will we?
Right. Yeah, I think it is. I remember hearing years ago that amphibians would be kind of the first that you'd see the big die-off of, because they're very susceptible and sensitive to the environment. Another question I had, you wanted to talk a little bit possibly about Jade Helm?
Well, Jade Helm, of course, is that the military exercise being carried out states of the United States. it seems, in the south and the southwest region of the country. The military has said very little about what they're doing and why. The logo for the exercise says Jade Helm, Mastering the Human Domain, and has a couple of crossed arrows, a sword, and the likeness of a wooden shoe in the middle of it. This has prompted a lot of speculation, some of it very informed, well-informed and documented. It does seem that Jade Helm, at least in part, and maybe in large part, is designed to integrate artificial intelligence with military operations amongst the civil society of the United States, going out among the civilian population, without, however, telling the civilian population what is going on and how it's being done and why, and without permitting the news media to observe what the military is doing and how and why and where and when. So there are many questions about this, and I'm back around to one of the premises I've made a touch point of this conversation, and that is that because of the great secrecy, because of the military's uncommunicativeness, I'm afraid that this thing is not being done for the American people, but is being done to them. The American people are not even being given the explanation that a parent might give to a 2-year-old who asks, "Why, Mommy?" In other words, the American people are being treated with contempt, not even worthy of being informed.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know we're a bit off topic from the UFOs, so I wanted to just. Well,
I don't know. Let's back up there.
Okay.
I don't know that that's off topic at all.
All right.
This whole push for artificial intelligence is not human, and which raises the question as to why do human beings in positions of command and power want to turn over their command structure, their human command structure, to an inhuman intelligence. That immediately raises an alarm bells for me, and I think it should for everyone. It then raises the issue as to whether the leadership structure in the country and in the military are in league with something that's powerfully cunning and not human. Why are they introducing non-human intelligence into the human domain? Why would human beings do that? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it bodes well at all, and I don't rule out that it could possibly be connected with off-planet intelligences, not necessarily human and not necessarily biological, or what we would call created as opposed to artificially fabricated intelligences. I am not sure. But what we are now well into, an invasion by a machine-like, a very powerful, non-human, machine-like intelligence that does not have our best interest at heart, because it has no heart. It has no soul. It has no spirit, but it does have an agenda of subjugation and conquest. And look around the planet, and you see a planet that is reeling. You see a planet that is under assault. You see a planet that, frankly, is dying. And I don't hear in the voice of the vast majority of the people I speak with an understanding at all, to the slightest degree, of the dire predicament that humanity and this planet are now in. People are assuming that things will go on as they have in the past, that because today is tolerably similar to yesterday, that tomorrow will also be not that much different from yesterday. And that is by no means true or guaranteed.
Yes. I'm sure you heard of Elon Musk's quote that he claimed that AI will be the end of us all.
I agree. I think, and of course, he's a high-level industrialist and financier. He moves in circles I've never been privy to. So if he is saying, a man like him is saying that much publicly, imagine what he must know. I'm guessing if that comment makes it into the headlines in the mainstream news media, that the reality is so much worse than that, along the lines of what I'm saying, and even more so. I know from my research that this investigation into artificial intelligence has been going on for a long time. And my understanding is that the earliest computers, electronic computers, used vacuum tubes. And then transistors came along. And then the printed circuit boards and microcircuits. And we entered the digital age. The first computers, I believe, were analog. And then we entered the digital age and digital supercomputers. And now the new generation of computers are quantum. They do quantum computing, which is multiple orders of magnitude faster and more efficient than even the most powerful digital computers. A complex computation that might take decades or even centuries can now be done in seconds or minutes by the new generation of quantum computers. We have entered a new world which the average person scarcely comprehends. Elon Musk knows that. As we get more and more plugged in to these artificial intelligence networks, what if the network or one of the networks decides one day these biological bipedal organisms that are swarming over the surface of the planet do not comport well at all with my machine agenda. And so it then gives launch orders to nuclear missiles because it's plugged in to the military command structure. I repeat, what is the American military doing right now, according to researchers such as J.D., who has appeared and spoken about this at length on the John B. Wells radio show Caravan to Midnight? Her research indicates, and she's got a lot of documentation, artificial intelligence into its field operations among the civilian population on the North American mainland. That's just the beginning. So what happens when this AI that's being integrated right now into the military's operations decides, well, okay, I'm in charge now. I don't need any general to tell me what to do. I see what to do. More than that, I see what must be done. Nanorobots do God knows what, etc., etc. This is the premise of a movie like The Terminator, for example. And where did the creators, the creative entities behind the Terminator movies, get their ideas? Well, they just observed the trends in the military-industrial complex, extrapolated out into the future, 25 or 30 years. They saw what was going, what was being set up, and you know what? We're almost there.
Wow. Do you think this also goes along with what people are talking about, the singularity?
I don't know. That's what Ray Kurzweil is talking about. Ray Kurzweil is Google's AI transhumanist guru or lead researcher. Ray Kurzweil wants to merge with the machine. He wants to download his brain into a supercomputer and become a cyborg. I think he is effing crazy. I think he is barking mad. I think he is certifiably insane and a dangerous man.
Okay.
I think and Elon Musk,
Elon
Musk, pardon me, associates with people like this because he works at a high level in industry and finance. And so he knows people like Kurzweil, and he is sounding an alarm that's saying, and he says to me forthrightly, whoa, let's not do this. It is extremely dangerous. That's the opposite indication that from what Ray Kurzweil is saying. I listen to Musk, and I think Kurzweil is a dangerous being on the loose.
Wow. What do you think about Stephen Hawking?
I don't know. How do you mean that?
Well, that's just a question up on the message board. What are your thoughts?
I don't know how to answer, because Stephen Hawking has done and said so many things over the years, so I don't know how to respond to the question.
Well, I know recently he's been in the news because he's working with a Russian that came up with $100 million to fund, like a SETI type situation. I don't know if you followed that or not.
No, I just don't know. The questioner has to be more specific. That's
they may come back, but until they do, we can go a little bit again off topic. One of the things you talked about was the machine, and I have no idea what that is.
Well, the reason I came to South America was to pursue a shamanic vision quest, which I have done. I have now known a number of shamans. The first shaman that I worked with was an ayahuasquero and a tabaquero, meaning the plants he works the most with are ayahuasca and tobacco. And I did a number of sessions with him, with some other people as well. One of the things that ayahuasca showed me was, number one, how fake this reality we're living in is. You have to understand that these shamanic plants are vastly conscious. We are taught in Western society that plants don't think. They're just kind of there. In fact, they're vastly aware and more aware than the average human. Far more aware. And what ayahuasca revealed to me in a series of visions was the total fraudulent, false fakeness of this reality and system in which we're immersed. It is a matrix, and it's fake, up, down, and sideways. When ayahuasca showed me that, I already knew intellectually, a lot of things, but it hit me with such emotional impact that I was thinking, get out of here. You got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. It seemed like the most horrendous, malevolent, practical joke, but with a real hard, demonic edge to it. And then the other thing it was showing me in a variety of ways over a period of a number of years now is that behind all of this false hijacking of reality, there's a false reality that's hijacked real reality, if you will. And what it has done is put a false facade over the whole planet and our perceptions, our society. The project is vast in scope, and it has such a hard edge to it. It's ruthless, it's relentless, it's cunning, it's conniving, it's terribly destructive, it is subversive. It is one of my friends nailed it in some of her comments when she said, it appeals to people's worst motives, their worst impulses, and promising them everything and destroying them in the process. And look around you and you see it happening in front of your eyes.
Someone keeps asking, what is your take on DMT?
Well, DMT is in everything. DMT appears to be a hyperdimensional molecule, biochemical molecule that facilitates communication with and perception with other realities and dimensions. It is present, evidently, in every living biological organism. We have it in our bodies. It's commonly found in plants, in animals, all over the world. It's in ayahuasca. It's in the other shamanic plants like the San Pedro cactus, the peyote cactus, the so-called psilocybin mushrooms. You would find it in Pandafloria or Malikawa. You would find it in the yopo snuff that the shamans here in South America use, and in other living organisms, plant and animal, all over the world. I think DMT is a molecule that interfaces at a deep level with our DNA. It's biochemically, it's got a different structure than DNA, but there are molecules in the biological realm, such as the DNA molecule, and then of course the DMT molecule, and some others that appear to work synergistically in a hyperconsciously way, not only in human beings but in plants. And in the case of DMT in plants, it appears that, and other similar or related molecules that work together, that they can have a pronounced consciousness heightening or consciousness deepening effect. DMT, from my perspective, is great stuff. It's one of the things in our bodies and in the plants that permits us to communicate with more profound, more sophisticated, more real layers of reality, if you will.
Wow. I had no idea what any of that was, so that was really interesting. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about what started you down. I usually ask this in the beginning of a show, but what started you down the path with looking into all these different sort of like paranormal, maybe a little, or very interesting things like the underground bases and things like that? What started you on that?
Well, it was more a question of the non-ordinary or the real side of reality coming to look at me rather than the other way around. It started at the age of 3 when an entity whom I called the Bone Lady came to visit me. I was a sickly little boy in 1958 in Tidewater, Virginia. I almost died when I was a young child, and I was out on the screen porch with my brother one spring day in 1958, and playing. We were just playing a simple little game, sitting on the floor. I was 3. He was about 4.5 years old, and my attention was suddenly drawn to a female entity standing on the eaves of the house, peering over the gutter through the screen at me. And she had me right away. I just tuned in. She downloaded a lot of information to me. She was tall, rather gaunt, with a dark, long, flowing garment. Female. I called her the Bone Lady instinctively. When you're 3 years old, you don't know that many words, but I called her the Bone Lady. And my brother was riveted. He didn't respond. For him, she froze him. It was all for me. Or maybe he was not open to it. In any event, she downloaded a lot of information to me, some of which I can discuss. And the part I would discuss publicly is that there are 2 parts of it. That a terrible, dark, grim time was on the way of woe and trouble. And sure enough, it is arriving. It's already here for a lot of people. For the majority of humanity, it's already here. And on the other hand, that it wouldn't necessarily have to be that way. That I and other human beings have the capability to greatly advance in consciousness and create a kind of a paradise here on Earth. We don't have to kill each other. We don't have to literally stab each other and all these. I mean, you read the news these days and the horrific, god-awful crimes, people just doing unspeakably vicious things, and you just say, my God, what's going on? And that's what the Bone Lady was revealing to me, that this terrible, demonic time was coming. But humanity has the possibility to do and to be so much better than that. However, we haven't. We're at the fork in the road, and the Bone Lady laid it all right out for me. There's this ugly, hideous, ghastly road that you can go individually and as a species. And if you do, God help you, because hell lies that way. On the other hand, you can decide to go the other way and advance individually and as a species into very high levels of consciousness and love and compassion and empathy and knowledge and wisdom. And in that case, your destiny will be wonderful. I mean, so it's for you to choose individually and as a species, as a global species. Which do you want? Do you want hell or do you want paradise? It's your choice. At this point, it seems like the group decision is tending more towards hell than to heaven, because we are in big trouble.
Wow. I would tend to agree with you on a lot of that. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. So one of the things you would like to talk about, I guess, is false reality versus real reality.
That's exactly what I've been talking about. Humanity has chosen false reality by and large. I almost ran into a young woman on the sidewalk today. She's walking down the sidewalk in the middle of a large city, people coming and going, behind and front, on her side, and she's texting on a handheld cell phone or iPhone or something, and she's doing text messages. You talk about false reality. She's oblivious to what's going on around her, and she's in this digital technology, this little digital electronic device, all wrapped up in this. I saw a cartoon a day or two ago where there's a long line of people, and they've all got these little handheld electronic devices they're texting on, and they're following one after the other off the edge of a cliff.
That's a good one. And I remember even years ago, I watched a woman texting. This is like 4 years ago. I was taking a bus from the airport, and the woman was stopped right in the crosswalk texting, while the bus had to slam on the brakes. It's unbelievable.
Well, that's right. Every day, people are getting killed in traffic accidents because they're going down the interstate highway at 75 miles per hour, and they're not even watching the highway. They're text messaging. They are so caught up in this little electronic reality in their hand that they even ignore the world around them to the extent that they physically jeopardize in real time their own life and the lives of others around them. Real reality is not good enough. They've got to have this little technological reality that they hold in their hand. And what are they texting about? Yeah, I'll meet you at the Olive Garden in 15 minutes. Blam! And they never get there because they turn themselves into a hamburger 3.5 seconds later. And I'm not exaggerating. It happens every day.
Right.
Humanity, we're making some insane choices. I have a cell phone, and most of the time, like 99.99% of the time, the battery's not even in it.
Oh, purposely, I'm assuming.
Well, of course, I take the battery out because it annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about
people calling me, and then I get bing bong, and it's vibrating, and it says something like, Jennifer Lopez is in Mexico City.
Well, also, it's not. They don't even know what the cell phones, are doing to us. They don't even. They've only been around for like 20-something years, so the long-term effects could actually be pretty bad. I mean, I know we're way off topic.
Look. No, I don't think we're off topic. I don't know what our topic is. Our topic is whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
And so I don't feel compelled to say this is on topic and that's off topic. You see, that's the matrix right there, keeping you inside the crowd. Don't get too close to the edge there. You might not like it over there. Something might happen that has never happened before. And that's how people are controlled, The tendency is to go right to the middle of the herd because that's where it's secure. On the other hand, if you have any interest in escaping, the only position from which you can escape is the very edge of the herd. In other words, the margins of the herd. In other words, if you want to escape, pretty well by definition, you will have to become a marginalized person because you cannot escape from the herd by burying yourself in the very center of the herd. That's just the long and the short of it.
Mm-hmm. We have just a minute left or so. Can you tell the audience again where they would find your Blogspot website?
Absolutely. It's Event Horizon Chronicle. .blogspot.com. That's Event Horizon Chronicle.blogspot.com. My books are listed. In the right-hand sidebar, you have but to click on the covers. And my name is Richard Sauder, Sauder.
Very good, Richard. It's been a real pleasure. Very interesting topics. That's for sure. You're right. We did. When I call it off topic, mostly it's a UFO show. People come to listen to that, but I think what we talked about was certainly fascinating enough.
And how do we know that we're not in a vast holographic program being broadcast from a giant UFO?
That's right. Hey, well, we got to go for now, so I want to thank you very much. And I want to thank a couple of other people out there. Peggy Shunning, who's on the road right now. I want to thank her for managing the Facebook page. Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse for the music. Alejandro Rojas will be back with us next week, so no fear on that. So this is Martin Willis saying check us out next week on the Dark Matter Digital Network right here at the same time. And keep your eyes to the sky.